Over the last 50 years, Western donor countries have poured $2 trillion into the African continent. That staggering transfer of wealth did not stabilize the continent. As outlined by Zambian economist Dambisa Moyo, those massive injections of foreign capital actually damaged local economies and entrenched a cycle of systemic dependency. To understand how $2 trillion can achieve the exact opposite of its goal, we can look at a single, highly localized project from an Italian NGO, operating in a magnificent, fertile valley along the Zambezi River. A group of young Italian aid workers arrived and saw that the local population had absolutely no agriculture. They immediately assumed the locals were starving due to a lack of knowledge. So the NGO imported Italian seeds and started paying the community to plant tomatoes and zucchini. The workers believed they were arriving in the nick of time to save lives. But their intervention, regardless of the good intentions behind it, was built entirely on the assumption that the outsider inherently knows more than the local. At first, the project seemed like a total triumph. The African soil was so rich that the imported seeds grew beautifully. The tomatoes swelled to massive sizes, and the Italians proudly pointed to the fields as proof of how easy agriculture could be. Then, right when the tomatoes became perfectly ripe and red, some 200 hippos emerged from the river overnight and ate the entire harvest. The Italians were completely distraught. They turned to the locals, shocked by the sudden destruction, and the Zambians calmly replied, "Yes, that's why we have no agriculture here." When the Italians asked why no one had warned them, the locals simply said, "You never asked." This blind spot stems from how Western interventions typically operate. They rely on two approaches derived from the Latin root pater, meaning father. When an intervention is paternalistic, the planners treat the locals like children who need to be taught. When an intervention is patronizing, they treat the locals like servants who just need to follow directions. Both approaches bypass the intelligence of the community entirely. You cannot offer effective economic help without first possessing a baseline, prerequisite respect for the people who actually live there. This idea forms the foundation of a principle outlined by economist E.F. Schmocker. In economic development, if people do not actively wish to be helped, you must leave them alone. Standard economic development usually ignores this, relying instead on public community meetings to figure out what a town needs. But the smartest, most capable entrepreneurs rarely show up to town halls to announce exactly what they plan to do with their own money. As management consultant Pierre Trucker pointed out, top-down structural planning is actually incompatible with an entrepreneurial society. It is the kiss of death for real innovation. You can see the failure of expert planning clearly by looking at the year 1860, when a group of experts gathered to forecast the future of New York City. They extrapolated the curve of population growth and reached a unanimous conclusion. Within 100 years, the city would require 6 million horses to function, and it would suffocate under the impossible volume of horse manure. While those experts were busy agonizing over a dirty, linear projection of the future, decentralized entrepreneurs were completely ignoring them. Over in tiny backwater factories, inventors were busy building a completely different technological reality, the automobile. You cannot predict the future of a city or a country from a bureaucratic office. You can only discover it by finding the passionate individuals who are already quietly building it on the margins. This requires a completely inverted methodology, known as enterprise facilitation. The rules are strict. You build zero infrastructure. You set up no offices. You arrive in a community with absolutely no prepackaged ideas, and you never try to motivate anyone. Instead, the facilitator operates entirely one-on-one. They meet people in local cafes and pubs. They offer absolute privacy and confidentiality to local dreamers. Most importantly, they shut up and listen. When this system was first tested in Esperance, Australia, the facilitator simply walked the streets until he met a local man smoking fish in his garage. The facilitator listened to the man's goals, helped him organize his operation, and connected him to a high-paying sushi market in Japan. The results cascaded immediately. Local fishermen saw the success and asked for help. Then the farmers came. By simply responding to people who actively wanted to grow, that single intervention expanded into 27 active, sustainable projects within a single year. Local passion is the only sustainable fuel for economic growth. An outside organization cannot manufacture it. They can only capture it, organize it, and serve it. This entirely redefines the role of the outsider. Instead of acting as a colonial savior arriving with the answers, the facilitator becomes something much more practical, the family doctor of enterprise. They sit at the kitchen table to diagnose exactly what a local business lacks. To survive, a company must execute 3 things perfectly. It needs a fantastic product, fantastic marketing, and tremendous financial management. The reality of global entrepreneurship is that no single human being in history has ever possessed all 3 of those skills at the same time. The person who can invent it, sell it, and manage the books simply does not exist. Read the first 2 pages of Richard Branson's autobiography, and you will find the word we used 32 times. He never uses the word I. The most iconic companies in the world, from Ford to Google, were never started by an isolated individual. They were always built by teams. The true task of the facilitator is not to inject foreign brilliance into a town. It's to figure out what a passionate local visionary is missing, and then connect them to the accountant or the marketer living right down the street. Lasting economic development is never achieved by airdropping ideas from an office thousands of miles away. It happens when you have the humility to shut up, listen, and help local dreamers build their own we.